reasons
to become
a vegetarian.
Number 1.
Because heart disease
Begins in childhood.
Number 2.
Because a vegetarian diet
Reverses heart disease.
Number 3.
because eating meat and dairy
Makes you fat.
Number 4.
because you shouldn't have to lie to your kids about the food that you eat.
Number 5.
Because in every package of chicken,
Every package of chicken,
there's a little poop.
Number 6.
Because meat is filthy and bloody.
Number 7.
Because no living creature wants to see her family slaughtered.
Ranchers that
You hear that?
Number 10.
Because mad cow disease.
Is in the U.S.
Number 11.
Because it's violence you can stop.
We can stop.
Number 12.
Because no one should have to make a living by killing.
Number 13. Because it takes a small person to beat a defenseless animal.
And an even smaller person to eat it. Number 15.
Because the grain used to feed them could feed them.
You need more?
Because they're defenseless.
Because when animals feel pain,
They scream too. Because they don't want to die.
Because they feel fear.
because no matter how you slice it, it's still flesh.
Because commerce
Is no excuse for murder. Because everyone wants to be free. Because eating fish doesn't make you a vegetarian.
Because might doesn't make right.
Hey everybody, welcome to Nugget 13. If there's one reaction to a vegan diet that I find most interesting, it's the assertion that veganism is extreme. Let's take a moment to really look at what dietary practices are extreme. It's time for a battle of the extremes. Let's start with how many people start their day, at least in America. Glass of milk, eggs, and bacon. What all does it take to produce that glass of milk? First, we have to artificially impregnate a cow, wait for her to come full term and birth her child, and then take the child away immediately, where he'll be tied down, barely able to move, and then slaughtered when he's a couple days old for the veal industry. Meanwhile, we're going to hook up some machines to the mother and steal the milk that she had made for her child. This process will be repeated over and over until this mother cow, who has a life expectancy of 25 years, is completely spent by her 4th or 5th year of life, unable to move or hold herself up, and is then ground for pet food and cheap meats. Now, in order for her to produce all of this milk and stave off the infections caused by the frequent milkings, you gotta pump her full of antibiotics and growth hormones. And then there's all of the food and the water that we have to give her to sustain her life while we're taking her milk. Now, I'm not gonna go into the amount of detail that I did in my last video, but if you really want to see the resources that go into creating meat and dairy, watch my last video. So let's see, what's more extreme? Forced rape, child kidnapping, machine-powered mammary thievery, antibiotic and growth hormone pumping, and extreme draining of resources, versus... Now, aside from everything that it takes to create that glass of milk, let's just look at the basics of it itself. Think about walking up to a cow and suckling from her. Now, moving on to the bacon. You've got to think about all the resources that go into first genetically designing these pigs, breeding them, raising them, feeding them, watering them, and then there's all the shit. There are literally troughs of shit surrounding pig farms. So much so that they have a common practice of shooting it directly up into the air. This causes respiratory problems for people who live around the pig farm, as well as it leaches into the groundwater. Now, you can call me extreme, but I prefer food that doesn't shit. Now, eggs. There's the fun fact that Gary Yourofsky likes to point out, that chickens only have one hole, out of which feces, vaginal secretions, urine, and your breakfast emerge. And aside from that, an egg is literally a chicken's period. I don't know about you, but I don't think you can get a whole lot more extreme than eating the menstruation of another animal. Now, I'd like to defer to Gary Yourofsky for one of my favorite examples of extreme eating.
Every single year, when people start cooking turkeys for the holidays, boy, people take a dead turkey, carve out a really big hole in that dead turkey's ass, take some stuffing and shove it inside their dead empty ass, and use their little dead ass as an oven to bake some bread. Somebody else's dead, empty, bacteria-laden ass to make bread? Ass bread? And people think vegans are weird. Because we eat tofu and fruits and veggies.
Now, do you want to take this to a more perverse level? How about the turducken? You're literally of a dead duck and stuffing that into the ass of a dead turkey. Who really has the more extreme way of eating? The raw vegan who's having some lettuce and dates? Or the normal eater who's shoving multiple dead animal carcasses into the rectums of other dead animal carcasses? Like so many Russian nesting dolls. And forget even that extreme example, whose food even has an ass? I vote for the consumption of anus as being a little more extreme than the consumption of fruit and vegetables. All of that isn't enough for you. You might remember from nugget number 6 some of the more fun things that go into your food. Like any of your pink, red, or purple processed foods, which use carmine, ground up carcasses of pregnant beetles whose fetuses are colored with the desired hue. Starbucks strawberry frappuccino and Dannon strawberry yogurt both get their color from carmine. And then there's castoreum, my favorite. Have you ever wondered where artificial raspberry, vanilla, or strawberry flavors come from? Castoreum! An extract made from dried, ground-up sacs located by the anal glands of beavers. Yes, we're talking about pouches in the ass of a beaver. Compare that to how your typical vegan gets their raspberry and strawberry flavorings. Pretty extreme. So let's summarize. What's more extreme? This or this? This or this? This or this? Anyways, I hope you guys liked the 13th nugget. Thanks for waiting for me through my absence and for all the support. Please go to bitesizevegan.com and subscribe to the RSS feed so that you don't miss the next upload, as well as subscribe to the channel. If you guys have any ideas for video topics that you'd like to see me cover, just send them my way. I'll see you guys next time.
Hey guys, it's Elva here, and today I have a special guest with me, Tisha Mahar. Hi everybody! She is an incredibly talented yoga instructor and a nutritionist, and Tisha has been vegan for 10 years now, right? I have. And today she's going to share with us her top 10 tips on becoming vegan. Some of you might know I was vegan last year for about 4 or 5 months, and I did it because I was actually really sick at the time, and I was able to cure my sickness just by changing my diet. And then after that I went back to being a pescatarian, but for 2014 I'm actually planning on going back to vegan. I don't know if it's going to be a permanent or if I'm going to do it just for a couple of months. We'll see, but I'm definitely looking forward to learning some tips from Tisha. Let's just get started.
So before I get into the things that I would like to share with you, I just want to comment on what you just said there. It's good to approach your diet as something that's going to change. It's going to change with the different stages of your life. It's going to change, maybe perhaps with the season. There's nothing that has to remain black or white. It's good to try things. It's good to try different things and really discover what works for you. If you've been doing the same thing since the time you were born, you might not even know how much better you could potentially feel with a different variation to your diet. So my first tip is Actually, I would suggest to do it relatively slowly. When you start to reduce processed foods, which tends to happen as you move towards a vegan diet, and as you certainly eliminate foods that are quite mucus forming, like meat and dairy and cheese and these kinds of things, often what happens is the body goes through a little bit of a healing crisis or a little bit of a detox. And if you do that too dramatically, too quickly, it can overwhelm you sometimes, and it can make you feel a little bit lousy. So if you start to eat a ton of cleansing foods right off the bat, you might start to feel headachy or nausea or anything like this. Say go slowly and just know and be aware that it's normal to feel those kinds of things, and that those things might come up for you, and once you move through them, you're likely going to feel really, really fantastic. So that's the first thing. As you're transitioning slowly, also be wary of fiber. Make sure that you increase your fiber relatively slowly, which again kind of goes with the same thing. If you start to add tons of vegetables and fruits and beans and whole grains and chia seeds and flax and everything all at once, you are going to feel bloated and maybe even constipated, and yeah. So as you increase your fiber intake, increase the water at the same time. So if you're doing tons and tons and tons of fiber, especially the fibers like the grains and the flax and those drier fibers, if you don't have enough water, you could actually become constipated, which sounds very contradictory to a plant-based diet. My third tip with regards to transitioning with ease towards a vegan lifestyle, be very careful with the amount of processed foods that you're eating. So sometimes what happens is people decide, I'm not going to eat eggs anymore, I'm not going to eat meat, I'm not going to eat these animal-based foods, and they don't know what to eat. So they start to eat lots of, for example, soy burgers and these different processed soy foods and processed, cereals and different things. So if you are transitioning to a vegan diet and you want to do it in a way that's really going to serve your health and make you feel great, the foundation of your diet should truly be vegetables, not grains or beans or soy. You can have obviously those foods in a vegan diet, but make the foundation fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds, so those really, really pure plant-based foods. So my fourth tip is with regards to really high-calorie rich vegan foods, so things like nut butters. So again, when people make the transition, sometimes they're like, I don't know what to eat, I'm so hungry, I don't want to eat the meat, what can I do? And one thing that people often turn to is nut butters, like almond butter and peanut butter and cashew butter or whatever. And again, these have their place, and I love almond butter, and I probably have almond butter, a little bit of it, a tablespoon or so every single day. It's one of my favorite foods. There is a tendency for people to get really hungry because they didn't know what to eat, or they didn't plan properly, or they didn't know. So again, educating yourself first is key. And then they can just, stick the spoon in the almond butter, and before they know it, they've eaten like half the jar. And that's really going to be difficult on your digestive system. It's going to be taxing to your liver to digest all that fat. Even though it's good fat, it's still probably a little bit too much. Definitely go easy on nuts and nut butters. Measure your quantities or your portions. So a good portion of almond butter or nut butter per day might be like 1 or 2 tablespoons. So measure it out, plop it onto a plate, as opposed to just eating out of the jar. With regards to nuts, it varies depending on how much other fats you're having, but a good portion of nuts per serving would probably be like 25 almonds, something like that. So just ballpark, but it's good with regards to really high calorie things sometimes to portion it out. Yeah. Because otherwise, before you know it, it can kind of get out of control. My fifth tip is with regards to fruits. Now, fruit, of course, again, is an amazing, amazing food, and I'm not here to tell you not to eat fruit, but too much fruit, tons and tons and tons of fruit all day long, can sometimes be imbalancing to people, because some people do tend to be more more sensitive in terms of blood sugar. And even though the sugar in fruit is good sugar, it's still a lot of sugar. If you're eating an entire papaya at one sitting, which isn't unheard of, some people actually do that, that's a ton of sugar. I don't know how much it is, I'm actually afraid to know, but it's a lot. Be careful with the fruit if you know especially that you are sensitive to sugar. Enjoy fruit, especially if you live in like Costa Rica and you can pick it from a tree. This is a different story. The fruit in Canada, in Toronto, it tends to be a little bit less mineral rich because most of it we're getting from California and it's coming across on a boat or a plane. So take that into account too. Take your demographics into account. But as a general rule, I would say have a few pieces a day. But I wouldn't personally necessarily eat a whole papaya at one time. I think it might just be too much sugar, might be. Unless you're like crazy athlete and you're going to be like burning that. But if you're sitting in an office all day and you're eating 10 pieces of fruit, I don't know. Too much sugar in my opinion. My sixth tip for transitioning to a vegan diet is, I think I already mentioned it actually, individualize your diet. Use a food journal as a diagnostic tool. Keep a food journal every day for 3 or 4 days and just notice, write down every single thing that you drank and ate that day and also how you felt that day. And you can really start to notice patterns in terms of what you seem to do better with, what types of food you seem to do better with. Tip number 7 is about sugars, and I'm not talking the fruit sugars now, I'm talking about isolated sugars. So sometimes people transition to a vegan diet, and they start adding in a lot of, we mentioned processed foods before, but other sugars as well. They think, well, I'm not adding white sugar to my coffee anymore, so I can add agave. These other sweeteners like maple syrup, of course, use them, sometimes honey, but again, I would just be moderate. My 8th tip is about superfoods. So when you transition to a vegan diet, a lot of people are really concerned about minerals and vitamins and are they getting enough? And certainly when you're in that stage of still learning, there's a chance that you might be missing certain things. So make sure you add superfoods to your diet, as this is a really great way to cover your bases. So basically what a superfood is, if you don't know, is a food that happens to be especially concentrated in vitamins and minerals and is just gives you more bang for your buck, basically. So really great superfoods that you can add in would be things like spirulina, amazing, chlorella, so these concentrated greens, they're so mineral rich. Spirulina, chlorella, chia seeds, maca. If you want to be vegan but not like strict vegan, bee pollen is a great one in terms of B vitamins. There's all kinds of these. Goji berries are really great. My 9th tip is to make sure that you are consuming a source of B12. So B12 is the one food that sometimes we just don't get enough of. A lot of my clients come to me and they do seem to have an anxiety about the B12 issue. There is some vitamin B12 in foods like spirulina, in algae. There's an amazing product called E3 Live, which is a source of B12 on the vegan diet. So these algae are a source of that. If that isn't appealing to you, if it's not something that you feel you're going to be consistent with, B12 is the one thing I would suggest that you supplement with. There is whole food-based B12 supplements available through health food stores, and those you're going to have an easier time assimilating than a synthetic form. But if you have any anxiety about B12 at all and you're not drinking algae every single day and that just doesn't seem to fit with your lifestyle or it turns you off or whatever, I would say if you're going to take one supplement, do take a B12, and again, there are some good products out there. So my last tip for transitioning towards a vegan lifestyle successfully is that you identify what your absolute favorite food is, and then find a healthy replacement or a healthier substitute. So don't allow yourself to be deprived of that one thing that you really love, or chances are, in an energetic way, it's not going to work out for you long term. You'll do it for a while, and then you'll backslide and you'll start going crazy on that food that you've missed or whatnot. So for me, it was absolutely chocolate. So I cut out chocolate that was really rich in sugar, and I cut out chocolate obviously that had dairy in it. That was one of the hugest improvements for my overall health, was when I eliminated dairy. So I wasn't going to eat chocolate with dairy, but I did find, for example, other versions of chocolate. I eat this 89% dark raw chocolate, and it just is amazing, and it satisfies that for me, and I have a little bit probably every single day. So find a replacement for that thing that you love. It might take a little work, you might have to experiment a little bit, but definitely don't go without, or you'll probably end up not being bad. Yeah. Cool.
So found this video useful, and so please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I will also have a link to Tisha's channel in the description box down below, so please subscribe to her channel. She does Video Mondays, where she gives you healthy tips every Monday.
Nutrition and yoga.
Yeah. And I'll have her Facebook and Twitter, all that information down below as well, so please check it out. So thank you again for watching. Thank you, Tisha.
Thank you.
This was so helpful. I'm really glad we did this. I hope all of you guys are having a great day, staying warm and healthy. I love you guys, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.
Bye, guys.
So while this government rounds up our wild horses with our tax dollars, meanwhile, processing of diseased and unsound animals linked to USDA inspector shortages. And this is a report by the National Joint Council of Food Inspectors, and they're whistleblowers, and they're trying to alert the public as to the dangers of our food. And unless you out there become active and start eating really good, wholesome food, such as fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, grains, and eliminate all meat, dairy, cheese, egg, and all those things that are contributing to heart disease and diabetes and E. coli and all kinds of diseases that's found in the meat that the animals are giving to us, which I believe personally is a karma, a bad karma for us for doing so. This is going to continue. So I hope you'll give your Congress people a call and say you want that $89 million that is going towards rounding up our innocent wild horses and burros a year to go instead to making sure that we're no longer fed diseased and unsound animals. So let's look at this report. Okay, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, is under fire over its shortage of meat and poultry inspectors after the federal agency failed to properly inspect more than 4,000 tons of tainted beef that was shipped throughout the country in 2013, and that's just tip of the iceberg. Reports the New York Times. So we'll go there and see what this report is from the New York Times. American meat plants said to face shortages of inspectors. The Agriculture Department is suffering from shortages of inspectors at some of the nation's meat and poultry plants. A top inspectors union official and food safety group said last week, raising the possibility that contaminated products could reach consumers. And I may add, are reaching consumers. The warning comes over a week after the agency issued a recall for nearly 9 million pounds of beef processed at Rancho Feeding Corporation in Petaluma. Apparently that corporation was feeding cancerous cows that were really not fit for human consumption. They were in that plant being processed. Okay, so let's go some more. The department said the meat was shipped to distribution centers and retail establishments nationwide, even though it lacked a full federal inspection. The meat was sent to about 1,000 retailers in Alabama, California, Florida, Mississippi, New Mexico, Oregon, and Washington. The Inspectors Union official Stan Painter, who is the president of the National Joint Council of Food Inspection Locals and a meat inspector in Crossville, Alabama, said the lack of inspectors most likely played a role in the recall because workers were stretched thin and did not have the time to properly examine meat. In many places, managers and veterinarians are being asked to help with inspections, Mr. Painter said. In Raleigh, New York, North Carolina district, for example, the vacancy rate for inspector positions is 11%, causing the workloads of the remaining inspection personnel to double or triple, according to recent data from the Agricultural Department. This is causing the inspection system to be strained to the point of breaking. Winoa Hotter, the group's executive director, said in February 8th letter to Agricultural Secretary Tom Vilsack. In the letter, the group attributes the lack of inspectors in some areas to a new poultry inspection program at the Agricultural Department. Under the new program, already in operation at about 25 chicken and turkey plants, the department is allowing poultry plant employees to do inspections on the processing line rather than the more thoroughly trained agricultural department inspectors who were previously required. Now agricultural department inspectors are stationed only at the end of the line for a final check on meat before it's shipped.
Our next guest is Dr. Ruth Heydrich. When I was planning this conference, well before that, I was asked, I think Doug, people that should be on Organic Athletes sort of Health and Nutrition Committee, who he thought should be on it. And the first name he came up with was Ruth Heydrich, and I'd heard about Ruth, and I was like, wow, that'd be great. So I emailed her. It was like within 5 minutes I got an email back, and she was like, yes. And I was like, wow, okay. And then I told her we're having this conference, and I think before I even asked, it was like, yes, okay. So, we wanted somebody to talk about what it takes to be vegan in the long term. You hear a lot of stories of people who have gone vegan or gone vegetarian, and they stay that way for a couple years, and then it just doesn't work out for whatever reason. Ruth has been vegan for 23 years. She's a tremendous athlete. She's won 900 now. She's going for 1,000 gold medals in running and triathlons. And we serve on VUNA together. We're both counselors on the Vegetarian Union of North America, so that's been an honor to work with her. I was very pleased to begin working with her. So I'm going to hand it over to her and let her talk about long-term vegan success.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Bradley. Yeah. Okay, you ready? First of all, I want to thank Bradley for putting this on. The inaugural, first ever Organic Athletes Forum. That's great. Because we've got so much good information that we want to spread to a lot of other people. And it's a challenge, I'm sure you all know, if not for yourself, certainly trying to convince other people. I'm going to have to tell my story, how I got to where I am today, because I did not just wake up one morning and say, I think I'll become a runner. Or another morning, I think I'll become a vegan. Or, the biggest one of all for me, I think I'll do the Ironman triathlon. Didn't work that way at all with none of the three. What happened back in 1968, and Doug's already referred to one of my idols, Dr. Kenneth Cooper. Cooper coined the word aerobics in 1968, published a book, which I just happened to come across. I was walking past the newsstand, and here's this paperback, aerobics. I had never seen the word before, and I'm thinking, what? I got to find out what this word means. So I picked it up, started thumbing through, and it was about running and how it helped every part of the body from head to toe. And I had problems at that time, every part of me from head to toe. And I was only 33 then. The calculator's going? How old is she? Well, save you the time. I am 70 years of age and happy to be here, and I'm going for a lot more and really want to promote athleticism for our senior citizens. And seniors in running is anybody over 40. So if you're not there yet, you'll be there in a blink. Believe me. It happens very quickly. Picked up this book, Aerobics, and read it in one sitting. It was so fascinating. Put it down about 2 o'clock in the morning and thought, I am going to go try this running. 1968, remember? This was when anybody was caught running, they were sure they were being chased by the police or something really strange, because when I started running, people would look at me and I'd get these weird, sometimes cars, I know they'd come right at me. But what I decided I'd better do is run first thing in the morning. So I'd get up when it was still dark sometimes and just started running one day after another, and found that I enjoyed it. I enjoyed getting out, looking at the morning. It gave me more energy. I started feeling better. I started sleeping better. The head cleared. The flat feet went. And every part in between started getting better. So I thought, this is really neat. So from 1968 to about 1974, I was just doing my early morning run for an hour. One day, somebody said to me, you know, they've got a 10K race. Why don't you enter it? I had never thought about doing a race. I wonder, gee, maybe, yeah, I'm going to do it. So I signed up for it. Get up there to the start line, look around. I'm the only woman. They're all men. 1974. This was way before the big running boom, and even women. So, guess who won their first gold medal? And I was hooked. I came home with that, put it on my dresser, looked at it every morning, and thought, wonder where more races are. Started looking around, and because of my training, you know, not really realizing what I was doing, I was training every morning. Anyway, that's the running part. So again, I didn't wake up deciding to be a runner. I got educated and found out that there's some really good things that happen to your body when you exercise it properly. Now, deciding to become a vegan one morning, well, that didn't quite happen that way either. I had been running 14 years, had been running races and doing pretty well, feeling like the fittest person I knew, and I'm sure I was, because I'd had this habit going. It's just get up in the morning, put on running shoes, out the door, and you run. No should I or will I or whatever. I just did it just as routinely as everything else you do in the morning. 14 years later, I find a lump in my breast, right here. Go to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, I don't think it's anything to worry about. Lots of women have cysts in their breasts. This is from eating animal foods, by the way, but he didn't know that. I didn't know that. He said, let's do a mammogram. The mammogram came back negative, so he says, see, nothing to worry about. Come back in 6 months and we'll check it out. So I did as I was supposed to and came back, and I thought it was larger, but he didn't think so. He said, no, I don't think it's anything to worry about. Long story short, 3 years later, I'm in the doctor's office. I know this time it is larger, because when I'm lying down, it is standing up like that. So I'm on the examining table, and this new doctor walks in. My medical records in his arm like this. He walks in, puts the sheet back and says, my God, why did you wait so long to come in? And I just panicked. I thought, here I've been doing everything that I thought I should be doing, running, being really healthy. I thought I was eating right. I had given up red meat years before and was eating chicken and fish and low-fat dairy, you know that story. And thought I was really healthy. And how could my body have betrayed me this way? He got me up off the table, took me by the elbow, and marched me down to the appointment desk and said, schedule this lady for surgery ASAP. So that was quite a shock, as you can well imagine. I was then 47 years old, thinking I am way too young to die. Although I did look at 50 around the corner thinking, well, life's over with at 50, right? You know, you're too young to really get it. But when you're 40-something and you think, you remember your grandparents in their 50s and 60s, you're thinking they're really old. I know with mine, I did not want to be like my both grandmothers, you know, had bodies like this and like this, and just run. My grandparents run. My parents. I mean, this was so different, and I had envisioned my life from here on out was going to be so different because I was into sports. And then this breast cancer thing comes along, and I think, my God, what happened? Well, I had the surgery. The tumor was the size of a golf ball. It had spread to one lung and my bones, and some of the doctors said, because I went to a bunch of them, saying, how could I have been so healthy? How could I have cancer that spread to my body? And they said, we don't know what causes cancer. They didn't tell me that it doesn't happen in other countries that don't eat the way we do. They did say that, well, exercising is good and it shouldn't have happened to you. And I'm saying, well, yeah, it did. Why? So I started doing some investigation. Why? Because I was doing everything right. Went to see the 3rd, 4th, 5th doctor. The 7th doctor I went to see was John McDougall. Anybody heard of John McDougall? Some of you haven't, right? Never not heard of John McDougall? Well, he practices in Santa Rosa right now, but back then he practiced in Oahu, in Kailua, Oahu, on the Hawaiian Islands, which is where I lived at the time, which was so fortunate for me. Because I had just gotten out of the hospital, saw this newspaper ad, literally a 2-liner, still have it, says, wanted, women who have or have had breast cancer to participate in diet research study. I thought, perfect. I was already a graduate student. I was well on my, in fact, all but the dissertation to a PhD in psychology. So I knew research study, boy, that's what I want to do. So I called him up and got right through. How many times do you call a doctor's office and the doctor answers? That never happened. He said, get your medical records and come over to the office as soon as you can. He greets me at the door, and I'm thinking, this is no ordinary doctor. Sits me down. 2 hours later, I'm a vegan. That's how quickly I made the change. And it was a matter of education. He said, the reason you got breast cancer is because of the hormones in the animal foods overstimulate the breast cells, and with your high-fat diet, and I said, no high-fat, chicken and fish. With your high-fat diet, so what you need to do is go on a low-fat vegan diet, and I just said, that's it. Signed up for the study, and he published the results in a medical journal about 4 years later. And I guess that might have helped with the discipline, although I really don't think so, because I said 2 hours, so I had brown rice and a baked potato and a big salad for supper that night. The next morning when I got up, something happened that I was really unaccustomed to. I had been constipated my whole life. I didn't know it. In fact, I'd been told by a number of doctors that going 3 or 4 times a week is normal for some people. And boy, is he wrong about that, because I then found out what normal was. I was getting enough fiber, finally. So this was one benefit that I saw immediately. I mean, just the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and boy, that solved one problem. And by the way, I have a grandmother that died of colon cancer, so I was headed right for colon cancer after the breast cancer. Doctors would tell you the two kind of go together. Well, same cause, obviously. So do a lot of other diseases. So, again, I didn't wake up saying, I think I'll become a vegan today. That's how that happened. The Ironman, okay. Notice my uniform. This is my very first one. Really happy with it because on the back it says what these distances are. You know, a 2.4 mile swim, 112-mile bike, and a marathon. Well, I had not gone back to work after the surgery, and so I had time. I still had the drains and sutures in. I started the vegan diet, and I'm doing some channel surfing, run through the TV, and I just happened upon the ABC Wide World of Sports, and I see this event going on. Now remember, I'm already hooked on running races, so I see these young, fit bodies doing the swim. Well, I'm already in Hawaii, so this is right here in my backyard. And I knew how to swim because I learned about the same time I learned how to walk, but I hadn't done any real swimming for years. But I thought, oh, I can do that. And then they jumped on their bikes and they biked 112 miles. So I thought, that's nothing compared to running. You're sitting the whole time, right? And you just turn your legs around. Yeah, I can do that. Piece of cake. The hardest part, obviously, is a marathon. Well, by this time, I forgot to tell you, I'd run, I think it was 4 marathons. So, and I, knew that was very doable. So I threw in addition to my every morning run, I started adding the swimming and the biking. And I started feeling more fit and stronger and thought, I'm going to beat the cancer. I am also going to do the Ironman. And then I thought, wait a minute, lady. Cancer patients don't do Ironman triathlons. And then I thought, I'm going to be the first cancer patient to ever do the Ironman. And then I thought, lady, you're 47 years old. These are all young people, 20s and 30s, who are doing the Ironman. Then I thought, well, I'll be the oldest woman, the oldest female cancer woman doing the Ironman. So that was my goal. I started training, and it just kind of fed itself. The more I did, the fitter I felt. I felt strong. I'd get a little depressed thinking, why me? Why the breast cancer? And is it going to kill me within weeks, months, maybe years if I'm lucky? I'd go for a run and a swim, or a swim and a bike, and come back thinking, oh my God, I am so lucky to be alive. It was just the opposite from the way I felt before. The exercise was important, but here's a lesson here. It's not enough. I was a marathoner, still got breast cancer. So I became a vegan triathlete. In fact, I have baseball cards. I have enough for everybody, so if you want one, they're just like regular baseball cards, except there's a picture of me. Across the finish line of the Ironman, it says vegan triathlete. And this is the message that I'm trying to get to everybody. This is the way to have exercise be fun, be competitive, because what I found, I don't know about you, but the best way for me to push myself is line me up at the start line, have the gun go, and see who wins. I've always been a little bit competitive, and still to this day, it's fun. Now, in terms of advantages, recovery, so many races, 900, as Bradley said, and I'm going for more. How do you get that many races? Well, Doug Graham mentioned this morning, people don't train, they just compete all the time. I didn't quite do that. I trained every day, but I entered as many races as I could, as many as I heard about. I went everywhere. I ran the Great Wall of China. I've done the Moscow Marathon. I've done Boston. I've done New York City. Total of 67 marathons. But at this point, I was still training for the Ironman. So I did things like the Run to the Sun. Has anybody heard of this race? It's on Maui, 37 miles. Start at sea level in Kahului, and you go up to 10,200 feet. And that was one of my training runs, because I thought, if I can do 37 miles at a stretch, surely that's going to help me. And this was 2 months before my first Ironman. So I took off running, and it's getting steeper, and the air is getting thinner, and I'm starting to labor and to think, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. Got to an aid station, and it turned out to be the 26-mile point. And I was getting some water, and looked down, and way down there, I could see the beach down at Kahului. And here I'd come. I thought, these legs have brought me 26 miles to here. I was so proud of myself. I've already done a marathon. Then I looked up here, 10 more miles, and they were almost straight up, and I thought, oh my God. Then I said, lady, if you think this is tough, just wait till the Ironman. And that just energized me. It just got me going again. Crossed the finish line, and guess what? Another gold medal. There weren't a lot of women in their late 40s, and that is one of the reasons why I did so well, but not always. There are some that I have really had to bust my butt to get across the finish line before they did. And it just made me stronger. Looking for other races, well, there was, I remember one time, Ala Park, there was a state championship 5K, and here I was going for state records because they were so soft. I mean, most women thought running, how many of you remember back a few years ago they told women not to run because their uteruses would fall out? Literally, one medical doctor thought that that's what would happen. And then all the rest thought that running was going to wear out your knees, that cartilage from running was going to destroy knees. So there weren't a lot of people, women, especially older women, running. So I was going to set a new 5K record at Ala Beach Park, and that race started at 7. Well, there was a triathlon in Kailua on the other side of the island that started at 8. And I thought, wow, what training for the Ironman. What I'm going to do is do the 5K starting at 7 o'clock. I'll be through by 20 minutes after. Park the car right by the finish line. I'll have them hold my gold medal, right? I'll pick it up later. And jumped in the car and went across the Poly. And I'd already told the race director of the triathlon that what I was going to do. I'd even thought about hiring a helicopter, get from one. I thought, no, if I finish by 20 after, which I knew I could, and drive across 20 minutes to the Kailua site, I'm already in running clothes, and the bike's in the trunk of the car, I can make it. But the race director said, don't worry, if you're not here, I'll find a reason to delay the start until you get here. I thought, wow, this is really neat. Didn't need to do that. Got there, and here I'm doing 2 races in one day. One weekend, I did 3 races in one day. Did 3 marathons in 3 weeks. Really going guns. The reason I'm mentioning this is because with the vegan diet, the recovery is so fast. I was ready within hours to go again, whatever it was. Training, if it was just a run, I knew I still had to bike and swim that day. And if I'd done a triathlon one day, I was ready to do the full thing the next day. In fact, with the Ironman, I remember having done the Ironman in Japan. And anybody here been around long enough to remember Julie Moss and Scott Tinley, those people? Yeah, great. Well, they were there in Japan doing the Ironman with me, and we were several of the few Americans, so we kind of hung out together, ate together, because none of us spoke much Japanese. And of course, I was the only vegan, unfortunately, but it was kind of neat being with these great triathlon pros. We did did the Ironman. I had first place in my age group by a full hour and felt great afterwards. In fact, the next morning I got up and went down, was having breakfast, and I tried to get somebody to get on the bus and go to Kyoto because I wanted to visit the temples and Deer Park. It's real nice. I mean, the opportunity to visit Kyoto, the ancient capital of Japan. They were all so tired, so sore, I couldn't get anybody to go with me. These are youngsters. How come they're beat? Well, obviously you didn't race hard enough. Well, I think I did. But anyway, I got on the bus, and here I'm all by myself, this 2-hour drive from Hikone to where the Ironman still is, to Kyoto. And I'm looking around. The only, in Hawaiian we say haole, it means, white person, on the bus. The rest are all Japanese, and nobody to talk to, and I'm looking at the scenery after a while. And I see this rolled up newspaper in the pocket, in the seat in front of me. And I thought, it's all Japanese. I can't read Japanese. No point in looking at that. And I thought, maybe they have some pictures. So I opened it up, and there, oh my God, there's me. in the paper picture of me right after finishing the Ironman, and I let out this yelp, and everybody in the bus, of course, is looking at me. The guy sitting right here says, I'm a professor of English at Kyoto University. What does it say? And so I said, that's me. I just did the Ironman yesterday and got a first in my age group. And the article wrote up, said, American woman, 54, does Ironman, conquers Ironman, conquers cancer. And of course in Japan, cancer is a real big, scary thing. So he stands up, reads the whole article to everybody on the bus, and I'm thinking, I'm in a movie. This is I can't believe this is happening. I'm alone. Nobody's going to believe me when I tell them the extraordinary circumstances that this came about. So is that going to lead to positive reinforcement? Right, yeah. Oh, I can do more of this. I did the Ironman in New Zealand. Well, back up just a bit. I got right after one of the Ironmans in Kona, I got a call from Continental Airlines. And this is the sports promotion director. He said, how would you like to be sponsored by Continental Airlines? And I go, oh my God. Sponsor? He said, yeah, they have an Ironman in New Zealand, don't they? And I said, yeah. He said, all right, we'll sponsor you. You wear Continental Airlines logo all over you, and we'll fly you there. I thought, this is incredible. So I'm flying down and get to New Zealand, and because I know the diet is so important, I offer to give some talks while I'm down there. So they got me the week before the Ironman. I'm giving all these talks and thinking I should be resting, I should be tapering, I should be taking it easy. I've got to do well in this. It's a championship, world, they say world championship. But I couldn't pass up this opportunity, so I'm talking to all these people. The next day I'm doing the Ironman and cross the finish line, look back and see where second place is. Because I knew who she was, another American lady, Joyce. I said, where's Joyce? Oh, she's a half an hour back. So, oh, good, okay. So then the newspaper, because the publicity, the New Zealand Cancer Society had done a bunch of publicity on my talk, so all the media was there. So as I'm crossing the finish line, there are all these flash bulbs going, just like this, and the reporters all asking me questions. I have a host who's a translator for me, and I'm doing all these interviews, and I'm thinking, my God, this is incredible. What have I latched on to? This amazing, amazing experience. The next morning, I go to get the results of the, printed in the newspaper, New Zealand Herald. There's only one newspaper in New Zealand. I take that home. And I wanted to take a bunch of copies home. So I walked to the convenience store across from where I'm staying, and there's a stack of newspapers. It's a Sunday paper, and it's this high. And there's my face on the cover. The picture is this big, and the headline, 2 inches high, Ruth, a woman of iron. And I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. Just again, like being in a movie. Couldn't really believe this was happening. the recovery part of it, well, same thing. I said, okay, who wants to go do something today? They're all, walking stiff-legged like this, going upstairs backwards, and I'm feeling fine. And I said, gosh, we're here in New Zealand. Let's explore the country. And so I get on the bus to go to Rotorua. Anybody been to Rotorua? It's beautiful. I go for a run. This is the next day. I'm totally recovered. Going for a run, come around the bend, and I see these geysers shooting. It's just like another world, like being on another planet. And I think, I am so lucky. And in a way, kind of owe it to cancer, because I never would have been here, done that without that motivation. And then I got back to the motel where I was staying after this run, and the lady says, they've got whitewater rafting that you can do this afternoon. I said, I've never done that. So here I am, the day after the Ironman, doing whitewater rafting, and everybody else is just kind of, as I said, not quite recovered. And I say, it's the vegan diet. If you're eating plant foods, fruits and vegetables, you recover quickly. So that kind of is what brought me to where I am today. Some of the questions people have about staying on a vegan diet, I had the medical gun to my head. I knew that I had to stick with the diet. Did not find it difficult at all. Found the foods, plant foods, so tasty. Thought, how come I never tasted this good food before?
So I want to thank you so much for watching tonight's presentation and that extraordinary story of this woman who is vegan for 23 years and is able to do so much with the energy she has. There's really bad karma attached to eating tortured, suffering animals, whether you believe it or not. And it's affecting you very, very deeply, both physically, spiritually, and mentally. It's time to tell your congresspeople that you don't want animals tortured, that you want your tax dollars going towards spending money on your food inspection and not on anything other than that. Please contact your Congress members. There's the number. And let them know that you're watching them and that you're not going to vote for them. And go vegan. Boycott cruelty. Go vegan. And the reward of that is incredible health. Thanks for watching Meet America.